All righty. Hi, folks. We are coming at you live. Hello. Welcome to Observable HQ's Twitch channel and YouTube Live, wherever you are joining us from. My name is Anjana Vakil. I am a developer advocate here at Observable and based out of San Francisco. And I am really excited to be joined today by our amazing ambassador, Olivia. Hey, Olivia, how's it going?
Hey, I'm good.
Fabulous. So we are really excited to be here with you today. Where are you dialing in from, Olivia, just for everybody's awareness?
So I'm in London, so I think it's later in the day than it is for you.
Yeah. Well, I hope you're having a good evening there. So we're gonna give folks maybe a few moments to dial in here. I think folks are probably getting the live notifications and starting to join. So we will give everybody a moment to join us. And in the meantime, just wanted to let folks know we have a lot of things going on at Observable this week. So right now we are kicking off a really exciting week of live streams. Olivia is joining us today, as you know, of course. And we have a bunch more events coming up later this week. So you can find out about all of the streams that we're doing this week on our meetup group at meetup.com/observablehq. So tomorrow we've got a really exciting stream coming at you with Shirley Wu and Mike Bostock talking about Observable Plot, our newly introduced data viz library, and how it compares to D3, which we all know and love. And then on Thursday, we've got our CEO Melody talking a little bit about what's going on with the company at Observable and how the last year of trying to grow a company in this wild world of 2021 has been. And on Friday, myself and Ian Johnson and Gelat will be joining for some Friday Fork Day fun. We'll be forking some notebooks live on the channel with y'all's help. So yeah, be sure to follow along on Meetup. You can subscribe to be notified of all our new events, and we hope to see you in lots of streams this week. It's very exciting, or I think it's very exciting. So hello, hi folks. Folks are coming in. Would love to know where everybody is joining us from today. Hey Fuchs, hey Alex, hey Phil, Vishnu, Brett, and Tom. Oh, we got the whole insider crew joining us today. Hello. Alrighty. Also wanted to mention one more thing before we get started, which is that we have started a new DataViz contest as of yesterday. So we are running a new contest called Fork to Win. It's all around the hashtag ObservableFTW, Observable Fork to Win, or For the Win, depending on how you read it. You can read more about the contest on our blog and on our social feeds. Basically, we're encouraging folks to fork one of our new template or boilerplate or integration notebooks that are available at observable.com/templates and share your published fork with the hashtag, and you can win some fun prizes. So you can read more about that on our blog. All righty. Hey folks. Oh, hi from Brazil, from New Zealand. And yeah, we are coming at you from both sides of the pond over here. I'm over in California and Olivia's coming from the UK. So lovely to see folks from all over the world, quite literally. Amazing. So, all right, without further ado, Olivia, we are here to hear about some amazing notebooks that you have made all about water lines on maps. So let me just pull this link up for folks. So this is Olivia's awesome water lines collection. And let me just drop the link in chat for y'all. We are really excited to dig in here. So let me pull Olivia's screen up so we can all take a look. And yeah, Olivia, can you tell us a little bit about well, maybe first a couple of words about you and what you do, and then we can dig into these waterline maps.
Sure. So I'm Olivia Vane. I'm a data visualization designer and engineer, and I do a lot of work with sort of cultural heritage data sets and sort of digital humanities work. So I did a PhD at Royal College of Art, which was all about data viz design for digitized museum and library collections. So lots of, sort of cultural heritage data sets, digitized paintings, digitized newspapers, that kind of thing. And then I work currently at the British Library on a big research project jointly with the Alan Turing Institute, which is the UK National Data Science Institute, which is, again, working with these big sort of cultural heritage data sets. So I spend a lot of time, looking at digitized historical content. And this, collection of notebooks that I ended up making was, I think, definitely inspired by some of the stuff that I've been working with and looking at. But I think probably essentially the best way to explain what this is all about is that these notebooks are all about waterlines in maps, which is this old technique that was really popular in the 19th century for drawing water in maps. And I ended up creating a whole series of notebooks about this. I hadn't sort of necessarily planned on sort of expanding this out to be quite as big as it was, but I sort of kept on pulling the thread, and I think I might start from sort of the very beginning of where this all came from.
Great place to start. I'm excited to dig in. I love how this is all rooted in the work that you do, looking at these real tangible maps. So what are we seeing here?
So essentially, this is a map that someone shared on Twitter. I think it was possibly James Cheshire, who's the professor of geography at UCL here in London. And it is a cholera map. So obviously, we're living in the time of COVID at the moment. But there have been, pandemics in the past. And this map is, it's a map in the Bibliothèque Nationale de France. And it's from 1884, and you can see it's called Le Cholera. And it is mapping the prevalence of cholera. You can see here in red. So just sort of a really interesting, we're seeing all of these maps and graphics all about COVID today. So much news reporting is with visuals. And actually there is a history of making these things. So this is all about sort of mapping COVID. But the thing that really struck me when I saw this was these water lines, though I didn't know what they were called at the time. But these, kind of ripples or waves, which are radiating out from the shoreline. I just thought, these are amazing. What are these? And I wonder, can I draw them using D3? I do, so much work using D3, making graphics on the web. I wonder if anyone has tried making these already, and I wonder if I can have a go. So it was,
awesome.
This kind of small question that I started, playing around with at the beginning of the year, and ended up, I guess I sort of pulling this small thread, and ended up pulling up all of these other kind of bigger questions, bigger topics, touching on all kinds of things that I hadn't expected, which I guess is sort of the big theme of this work. As it ended up being a lot longer than I had planned, and touching on so many more topics than I had anticipated.
As one of my coworkers showed me a tweet about the other day, we do these things not because they are easy, but because we thought they would be easy.
Precisely. I was just like, this really interests me. I'll see where this goes.
I love that. And I bet it was an amazing challenge. I mean, it's always great to be pushing your skills forward. So how did you approaching it?
So what I ended up making is I ended up creating a series of notebooks. So there's 4 notebooks in the collection, and I think we're going to have a look at all of them, but I just sort of briefly go over the structure. But the first notebook is all about all of the different ways that water has been drawn in maps. So water lines. Oh no, is my notebook
Well, it's live TV. In the meantime, just for our newcomers to the stream, just sharing this link again. We are looking at Olivia's amazing collection of waterline maps notebooks, which you can find at this link, observablehq.com/collection/AddOliviaFain/watermarks. So if you're just joining us, we are talking to Ambassador Olivia Vane about these amazing waterline notebooks.
Which unfortunately currently crashing, but the first notebook is all about all of the different ways that you can draw water in maps. So these water lines shapes, they got really popular in the 19th century in Western maps, so maps in Europe, maps in America, but it's definitely not the only way you can draw water. And I think that the way that we draw water in maps today is you just color it blue, but if you're not using color, then how do you describe water visually? And I realized that, actually this is, it's really hard to draw water. This is something that artists have returned to over and over again. David Hockney, all his pictures of swimming pools is him, trying to explore how on earth do you, draw water? Do you draw the sea? Do you draw rivers? When really you're trying to kind of create shapes that describe movement, waves and ripples. These are the shapes that water makes when it's moving. And so, people who've made maps in the past, oh dear, my internet is failing me.
No worries. Let me see if I can share. I have a copy up right here. So let me just see if I can share that.
Switch in.
Ooh. All right. Let's see if we can get this going.
Oh no, it's back. It's
back. Oh, excellent. Never mind.
Yeah, so these are some lovely water lines from a map from 1896. This is an Ordnance Survey map of Britain, but I ended up collecting this. I've described it as a zoo of loads of examples of all the other ways that you can draw water, and it's just there are so many different ways. All these kind of squiggles, things that look like, sort of choppy waves, things that look like hair or snakes. It's just, this sort of amazingly diverse. That really, don't look very much like water to me. This one kind of looks to me like hedges. This is a really nice feature of working in an observable notebook that I could I thought it would be really nice to be able to kind of zoom in on the water shape, but also to be able to bring up what the whole map looks like. And so I was able to find a sort of template bit of code of someone who'd made a gallery and adapt it and just drop in my sort of, custom way I wanted to present the material. Was great. So collected all of these different ways you can describe water visually.
I love this. And this reminds me so much of the collages that you made for the Women's History Month notebook. I love how this looks. This makes like a patchwork of all of these different ways of looking at this. If folks haven't seen our previous stream from a few months back on the Black History Month and Women's History Month contest winners, Olivia had one of the winning notebooks there. So check that out for more of her amazing work. Yeah, but these are really incredible. We've got some with like almost anthropomorphized waves here, and exactly. I'm like, these look like kind of snakes or something to me. Yeah, like all kinds of things. And it was fun because I got to I pulled in some maps that were made in China and Japan and some from the Islamic world as well. So I was trying to sort of dig around and see if I could find examples from cartographic traditions from different places. But this is I think one could go searching for this kind of thing forever. It's a bottomless pit. You could pull this thread forever. But okay, so there are all of these different ways that you can draw water that people have used in map designs. But the one that really interested me was this water lining one. And so the question is, can you do that in JavaScript? And the answer is yes, you can. But there are different ways that you can approach it. So the
second of the notebooks is all about how do you draw these using JavaScript, using D3. And really, it's looking at two different approaches. So I had a look at other notebooks that other people on Observable had made, drawing waterlines. And these sort of seem to split into two different approaches, because this is really it's a kind of geometry problem. How do you create these lines? And there are essentially two ways you can do it. The first is by using stroke width. So stroke is when you're drawing the outline. And if you just draw an outline around your shape and you make that outline thicker and thicker and thicker, and then you can either, be drawing a white outline that you're also making thicker and thicker, but not quite as thick as your colored one. You're sort of cutting out the spaces. So you can do it that way by, drawing your stroke thicker and thicker. Or you can just create a new data set where you're creating new paths that you will just draw using your new data. And so I had a go at both, and essentially found that they both have constraints and are work well in some situations.
Okay, so let me try to make sure I'm understanding these two different approaches. So on the first approach, we have our SVG, maybe our path that describes the shape of the land, and what we can do is add a border to that, or add rather a series of borders to that. Some are white, some are the stroke color that you've chosen, and by kind of creatively choosing the width there, we can effectively create this ripple effect. So that's one approach. And then the second approach is to actually create new paths with the different geometries that are a little bit wider each time.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Just to make sure I'm following along, because
okay. Two ways. And so I have a go doing both. And the first one is the strokes width one. So it's the outlines, drawing these increasingly thick outlines. And so there's a function here that I made, a general function for doing that, and you can see some of the examples using that function. So this is Shetland in Scotland, which is sort of northeast Scotland. This is Ireland, and Orkney. And so you can twiddle with the parameters to change the way that it draws. So essentially, do you want all of the lines to be equal in how they're spaced? Do you want the thickness of the lines to vary at all? It can look nicer if maybe the lines are getting thinner as they're getting further away. This idea of like the ripples kind of dissipating. In the first example I showed of the cholera map, they kind of look as if the lines are almost, getting slightly fainter as they get further away. So there are these kind of, nice little visual tweaks you can do to change the aesthetic.
Gotcha.
This example here is it's using this increasing the stroke width, these outlines, but also adding raster imagery on top from web map tiles. So this is the Scilly Isles in the UK, which is a set of islands off the southwest, off the coast of Cornwall.
Gotcha.
And this is drawing water lines around the boundary data, a GeoJSON I had of the Scilly Isles. And then on top of that, I've included some web map tiles, which are an old Ordnance Survey map from the 19th century. So this map actually, had water lines drawn on it. So I'm combining both the old 19th century original map imagery, and this map is from National Library of Scotland. They've digitized huge numbers of old Ordnance Survey maps, and it's an amazing site that I recommend everyone go and have a look at. But so this is combining kind of the old and the new together, with the water lines drawn in JavaScript.
That's amazing. So we're looking at an original water lines map, but with like 21st century water lines on it. I love it.
Yeah.
And the folks love it as well. Yes, folks are saying it's incredible. There's so many great maps in that collection that you showed us before. So this is quite awesome. I wonder whether folks, if anybody in the chat has any questions for Olivia, like please let us know in the chat, and we'll make sure we can talk about them. But I love also that you've added these controls to select the different colors.
You can you can change the colors. I think that everyone likes the blue better, but I was having fun with some other crazy colors.
I kind of like the brownish one. The it sort of goes with the tiles there.
I quite like, but maybe there's an argument to go with the blue. But I did, I thought that we could drop in some new GeoJSON and draw a fresh one of these.
That would be great. And maybe we can, as we do that, maybe we can kind of like take a little walk through the code and sort of get a better sense of how you're making these computations. That would be, I think I would learn a lot from that. I'm sure other folks would love to see that as well.
So something I prepared earlier, Blue Peter style. I thought because obviously the Tokyo Olympics has just started, it would be fun to play with making waterlines of Japan, which is both is an island nation, but also like lots of islands. So I think it's fun to make these with interesting coastlines. So
definitely,
Japan would be fun to do. And so I've just attached a GeoJSON describing the boundaries of Japan, which is this one. So I just prepared this earlier. So that's what it looks like.
Awesome. And I'm just going to throw a link up here for if folks are wondering what we're looking at right now. It's an observable notebook, and we try to make it as easy as possible to drop new data into a notebook, so that if you find a really awesome notebook like Olivia's waterlines, you can take your own data and get it in there. So you can read up in our documentation more about how to get your data into a notebook, including using the file attachment method that Olivia just showed us right here.
Really, really nice. And so this has not worked. We've got a big square, and I knew that this would break.
Live TV.
And the reason for that is because you have to be really careful when you're working with GeoJSON and D3 with winding order of polygons. And so the winding order is whether your polygon shape, the points are going clockwise or anti-clockwise, because that describes whether your shape is a shape or whether it's a hole in a shape. This is from one of Mike Bostock's blocks, which I think is like a great explanation. And unfortunately, the convention kind of divides. So the convention for winding order in the GeoJSON spec is different from the convention in D3. So if you get a big square when you're doing web mapping, that is what's going on. And what you need to do is to reverse the winding order. So what I'm going to do is to reverse that, and then we get Japan with our nice water lines.
Amazing. Okay, so how did you just magically reverse this winding order here?
So it's using a JavaScript library called Turf, which I will use more later on. And Turf it's an open source library for advanced geospatial analysis in the browser. So it's JavaScript, and it lets you do all of these geospatial operations, including the one I just used is rewind. So you're switching whether it's your polygon points are going clockwise or anti-clockwise. So it's just a simple way that you can reverse that with JavaScript. So I already have Turf, the library, included in the notebook already. So I could just use Turf rewind very simply, just like this. And so we can now see Japan with our water lines, and then these are the different variables which control, how exactly we draw the water lines. So I think that this one is the size.
Nice.
And then this one I think is, how far off the coastline do the water lines go? So we can
Awesome.
make them really narrow in, we can make them really wide. You can start to see there's kind of some funny stuff going on around here with these islands, which I come to later. You end up getting these kind of strange artifacts. And I think if I wrote this code again, I think I would pass in an object rather than all of the variables like this, so that I would remember.
Maybe a little bit, just in terms of this little mini API that you're designing, it might be easier to have named properties in like an options object. But either way, look at this lovely documentation, all of these comments here. So folks can
try to explain.
Yeah. Okay. So we have all of these great options here. So the number of lines, the size, the spacing exponent. Yes. Okay.
So there's all of these different variables that you can tweak. Do you want the opacity to fade out as you're going out? Do you not? Do you want to change the thickness of the lines? All of those kinds of things. So this ended up kind of growing and growing. And now there's a lot of variables in there. So I can change. I think that this was the number of water lines. So I can add in loads more water lines.
Amazing.
Change the color and do whatever I want.
Very cool. And I bet it would also, if folks wanted to fork this notebook, not only can they play around with the options and whatnot, but they could even maybe add, you could probably quickly drop in some observable inputs to make some of these a slider, or perhaps also just add named controls there to remember what each of these is doing. So
that would be super helpful.
That would be awesome. Folks could, if somebody wants to fork one of these and then make a contribution, they can try to make a suggestion to the notebook. So we have that mechanic for doing things in observable. So folks can try out these observable inputs from our inputs notebook that are all built into notebooks. Very cool. This is amazing. All right. So
we made some water lines, which is good step one. And then I thought we could, go on to the other way of doing it, the second way of doing it.
Let's do it. Let's dive in. As it were.
Those kind of strange bits and pieces of lines that I showed before, that I'm not entirely sure what's going on there, but the further off the coastline your water lines go, and if there are like lots of separate land masses, if there are lots of little islands, the more likely you end up with kind of strange shapes appearing. So this drawing strokes around your shape to make the water lines works really well if the water lines are really close to the shoreline, but as they get further away, you end up getting these kind of bits of line that shouldn't be there, which I think is something to do with smoothing functions. So this is I've showed that I've had to smooth the line that you draw, or else you end up with this crazy spiky.
Wow, that looks kind of awesome from a creating art perspective.
Possibly. I did think this is kind of hilarious. This should be the Eurovision.
Oh my god, I love it. I love it.
So I think that it's something to do with the smoothing function, turning those spikes into curves that you end up with problems when there are islands and the water lines are going further off. But I never quite got to the bottom of it. But but there is if you want to do water lines that are much further away from the coast, then you can do the second method, which is to create new data. So you're creating new polygon data based off your land shape. And I did this, and it's using the TURF library. So it's the same geospatial JavaScript library that I used to change the winding direction It has a really handy function called buffer, which is, yeah, this one. And it just, well, it does like exactly what you want to do for water lines, which is it takes a shape and then you can buffer that shape by a given radius, which means that it'll then create a new shape, which is your old one expanded by whatever radius you gave it. So it's like, it's exactly what you want to do for water lines. The only shame is that it can be quite a little bit slow to run. It's a bit computationally intensive, so it takes a little while. And so what I ended up, and so this is an example using the buffered method instead. So these water lines are quite far off off the coast, but we don't have any of those strange artifacts. What I think what is quite fun about these is it really draws attention to like tiny land masses that otherwise you would never notice. So this thing here, I was like, I don't even know what that is, and I looked it up, and I think that it's something called Rockall, which is an uninhabitable granite islet 300 kilometers away from any other land, which looks like this.
Wow.
I've heard of before, but like suddenly is like really prominent because it's out by itself, and you get these ripples radiating off. Also, like, I think that's St Kilda. Yeah, you suddenly start to notice all of the tiny islands that you wouldn't have noticed otherwise.
Amazing. Yeah, and good call. Man About Couch called it in the chat. Was able to identify Rockall. Nice.
Oh,
and I think folks are sitting atop Rockall with a laptop and a satellite dish or something like that.
Like hanging out with
Love it. Yeah. Love it. And that amazing Eurovision art earlier. Yes. Alex is going to get tattooed, I believe. So we definitely want to see that. Please share with us. This is awesome. But yeah, this gives such it's a different vibe than the previous approach.
Yeah. This is the really fun thing, that when you can play with the variables, and by changing the spacing and changing how many you're drawing, you end up getting, like a very different vibe. Like for me, I wrote this in the text, but for me, I'm getting kind of retro lettering, retro typography vibes. Like something like this.
Yeah, 70s logo style.
Yeah. And so this is like an example of one of those things where I'd say, I started with a simple question, this sort of small thread, and you start pulling, and suddenly you're sort of thinking about, what is it about the particular shape that's making this look like water, or is making it look like a sound wave, or is making it look, like the wind or something else? What are the kind of subtle visual cues that mean that we interpret this kind of abstract shapes in particular ways? Because, it is these kind of small, subtle things.
So cool.
And I like, this is the 1968 Mexico Olympics logo, which is
speaking of the Olympics, I love it.
Yeah, we have a theme today, which I think is inspired by indigenous art in Mexico, but I mean is similarly, it's these kind of buffered paths radiating out, and so so this is, if you remember the French map that I showed before, is essentially a recreation of that using the buffered technique.
Love it.
And
so this is great. I was wondering, how are we going to do all of this complex geometrical math to figure out, how to space these lines apart? So I love that Turf can just do it for us with one little method.
It's like the ideal scenario. Someone has already done it for you, and so you just use that. And it's kind of the same with using web workers here. So this, as I said, making the buffered paths is quite slow, and it can freeze the browser. So I ended up instead using web workers to create the new buffered data, and it was the first time that I've used web workers, but in case anybody doesn't know, it's just doing parallel computing in the browser in JavaScript. So if you have some computation, yes, no big deal. And if you have some like meaty bit of computation that you need to do, and it's gonna, block the main thread of the browser and crash the browser, then you can separate it off into another thread. And so, I hadn't used them before, but very helpfully, Phil on Observable had already created a notebook which demonstrates how you can use web workers in Observable. And so it was really, really quick to build off that and to use web workers to do the buffering to create these new paths without crashing everything.
Amazing. So I think we are lucky to have Phil joining us in the chat today. So thanks so much, Phil, for sharing that knowledge. And if you have the link to that notebook of yours, we would love to see it. Meanwhile, I'll try and dig it up. But that's awesome. Okay, so instead of having, because maybe you've run into this problem before where you have like too much going on in one notebook and it just seizes up and everything is terrible. So we're using web workers as a way to escape out of that and take advantage of this relatively new development in JavaScript, I believe, in the browser ecosystem, to be able to kind of pretend that JavaScript can do multiple things at once. So thanks, browsers, for implementing this. And thanks, Phil, for showing us how to use it in Observable.
And so what I've done here is, you see it, like, it didn't take very long at all, I copied this bit of code from the Mediterranean buffered paths, and I've just switched in Japan, the same GeoJSON that we were using before, and created this new feature collection of new buffered waterline paths for Japan. And then hopefully, it works.
Huzzah!
Like the strokes method at the top, I created a function that you can use, and you just have to drop in the new buffered paths data. And then you've got other variables for controlling how it draws. And we've got our lovely water lines, and we don't have any of those strange, like, broken bits of lines anymore. It's all clean and lovely. Which then brings me on to the kind of next thing that I ended up working on this with, which is the second two notebooks in this collection, is after I'd been kind of playing around and starting to draw these on the web, it sort of prompted me to think, I wonder if I could make them move. I mean, the whole idea is that these are supposed to look like water. They're supposed to look like ripples or waves. I'm not sure which, but, sort of, which are both, moving, which are, it's a shape that is a moving phenomenon in water. And I thought, drawing this digitally, can we make them move? And so the next two notebooks are exactly that, is exploring how can we make them move. And again, it's looking at two different approaches. The first one was kind of the first method that I reached for, which is SVG morphing in D3, because that is, doing a lot of work in D3. That was kind of my immediate thing to reach for, because doing transitions in D3 is set up to be really, really easy, and it's so familiar to me. I use it all the time. So this was kind of the first thing that I reached for, was I can use transitions in D3 to do morphing between the different water lines. This turned out to be a lot more complicated than I had realized. And I stepped through this in the notebook, and it does work in the end, but there are some sort of big constraints. So I think this is a good lesson in that, don't immediately just reach for the, typical way that you work with something. And in the end, I found that actually drawing image frames in Canvas like a GIF, creating fresh image frames like a GIF, which is the second way that I try, actually works a lot better. And it's just, yeah, when you think about it, having the water lines kind of washing out, the animation is repeating itself over and over. So it makes sense to create, just one set of frames for that animation that you can just run through on repeat.
Loop over and over again.
Exactly, rather than with the SVG approach, which is, it's having to do that computation continually, and it's why my laptop sounds like it wants to take off.
It's trying to go to space with all the billionaires. But I'm sure this is, trying to explore both of these methods. Surely, reveals a lot of interesting things about kind of how these, what situations both of these techniques are really good for. So you mentioned that you use these D3 transitions all the time for different things. So what would you say was you were just running up against the infinite nature of these animations as part of the problem with D3 here? Or were there other issues that made it a little bit difficult to work with this kind of complex geometry?
Yeah, I think that the main issue is how SVG paths are articulated, how they like how the actual shape is described in the web page, which is that in an SVG path, it's a series of points. You have move to the first point, and you have a whole series of points that describe the whole shape of your path. And so D3 is, amazing at interpolating between different values, different colors, different sizes, like in this example. But because of the way that SVG paths are, kind of encoded, moving from one path to another path in a way that looks natural, you suddenly realize is actually not straightforward at all. Because, two paths may have a different number of points. And so if you're I think that the way that the sort of straightforward way that the transition happens in D3 is that your first point in path 1 becomes your first point in path 2, second, and so on. So it doesn't pay attention to how many points there are in each path, which points are near to each other. And so this is what happened when I first tried, which is just like not at all what the kind of effect that that we're going for. It just it's a scramble, and it's
okay.
Yeah, off the southwest corner of Ireland, that there's kind of a corner to the shapes when you move it, because that's the beginning, I think, of the path. And but yeah, it's not good. So
gotcha. Okay, so since we're going from things that are kind of like different in kind, as it were, we're not sort of mapping 1-to-1 between a path over here and then we just move it over here, but it's the same basic shape. It has the same number of inflections and so on and so forth. So it's like that difference between, as we're trying to get more and more smooth curves going on, it's D3 is trying to figure it out and getting a little confused and making some more cool art. Good job, D3, being very creative. But
it's
okay, awesome.
Scrambles. But yeah, it's not quite the effect that we were going for. And so I had sort of a lot of scoping around to figure out what was, was there a way around this, and found that actually there is a great library called Flubber that was created by Noah Veltman, who's done a lot of stuff on Observable, which is exactly for trying to create a smooth interpolation between SVG shapes, which is exactly what we want in this case. And so there's a little demo here, and you can see that it's much closer to what we're going for. We don't get the crazy scramble, and so you have to make sure that in your animation you've defined that you want to use Flubber to do that animation.
Gotcha.
And then that means that we can create an animations like this, which is it's doing this SVG path morphing. So one path turns into the next path, turns into the next path, and so on.
And that's, yeah, so Flubber is helping figure out how it needs to map those, like, I have a different number of points now. It's smoother now.
Exactly. It does all of that smoothness. It still doesn't work like perfectly. So if there are any like extra land masses, any little islands off there, like it doesn't know like what would be the kind of natural way that we'd want it to morph. That's just too complicated. So so in this implementation, I've slightly cheated, and you can see that the closest water lines don't actually move. And so I'm only animating out from when the water line is all joined up. So it's just going from one ring to the next ring.
Okay. And so it's doing some interesting things, but this is the fun part of letting the computer figure out how it wants to draw things. Is sometimes you get interesting little effects. But folks are so impressed by this. It is indeed rad and does make us say wow. And this is awesome. And meanwhile, we've had a whole conversation in the chat around how these web workers work and with respect to observable notebooks. So we've got a continued discussion, I think, to perhaps take offline, or we can maybe have in comments on Phil's notebook or in other places around how we can use these web workers to jump out of the single thread that Observable is running in to do those more heavy computations. So love this conversation that's going on, and yes, we will. We can continue that as we go. But meanwhile, look at these amazing ripples we've made. I love this.
We have moving water lines, and you can switch in whatever GeoJSON you want. So this is Iceland, and you can reverse which direction they're going. So I ended up I sort of made these and just made them always with this idea that they were going to flow outwards. And then I had a sudden kind of realization just as I was about to publish of, oh, hang on, like, is that the natural way they should be going, or should they be going the other way? Because obviously waves wash into the shore. But they look kind of weird to me when they're going the other way. It looks almost like they're kind of being sucked in.
Well, they kind of do both, right? I mean, the tide comes in, the tide goes out, so you can switch back and forth.
Who knows? And just because I think we're running out of time, I'll switch over to the final notebook, which is looking at the problem from a different way, which is rather than thinking about this SVG path morphing, turning one path waterline into the next one and so on, just sort of abandon that perspective and instead think of it as creating these GIF frames, and you can, I'm going to come down, there we go. And so this is again like a merging of old maps. This is, and I picked a like deliberately very, very intricate coastline. This is it's again in Scotland. I think this is in the Outer Hebrides. And this is again, it's a map which did have water lines, and I've just included the land and then drawn digital water lines over the top. And you can see, if you look closely, that all of the little crevices between the land, all of the, the water in between, all of the animated water lines all still works, which which you don't get with the SVG morphing. So I think that, and I think it's those little bits where the lines are kind of washing into each other, which are kind of the nicest to watch. So I think, of the two, this is the more successful way of doing it.
Love it. And folks are saying, yes, this looks like Westeros from Game of Thrones. It is so cool. Love it. This is amazing. Okay, so from this approach now, we are treating this as, you're essentially drawing a completely new map for every frame in the animation. So, and then we play those as kind of animation frames that then give us this kind of effect. But we're essentially, we're not trying to do any kind of relating one path to the other. We're just drawing a new picture each time we want to move something. Okay.
Exactly. Which means that if you want to reverse which way the waterlines are going, if you want them to go inwards instead of outwards, because you've just created all the frames, you just reverse which order you're running through the frames. You just go backwards.
Love it.
And it works.
Yeah. So let's see. Oh, cool. So now they are really washing up on the shore. I love it.
Sucked in.
So how did you, did you essentially have to kind of rewrite the entire way that you were computing these water lines in the first place in order to make this work? Or
I just had to fresh
okay, so what did that look like? How did that feel?
More sensible way to do this. That kind of horror realization. So I've got another example. Again, this is the silly Isles from the previous notebook. You suddenly realize, hang on, there's a much more sensible approach.
But sometimes, it's the journey and not necessarily just the destination.
I've learned a lot about SVG path morphing.
And computation in JavaScript, web workers, all of these different libraries that folks have created. Lots of things uncovered here. So I would love to know, when you decided to start this new approach and sort of start from scratch, how did that look like? So now you're drawing everything in Canvas, is that right? And creating.
So it's not a completely fresh way. It's like drawing the static water lines. There's you are either creating the new buffered paths or you're doing increasing the width of the outline. So this method with Canvas is doing the increasing the width of the outline, and it is it's adjusting exactly the placement of those outlines over a series of frames. So it's still building off, drawing the static water lines. It's just taking a different approach with the animation, the morphing.
Gotcha. So it's almost as if we took the one of the second notebook or the first notebook where you're drawing these maps and kind of played with the little parameters there to change the width that we're showing, change the spacing, maybe the opacity of the outermost lines to make them kind of do that nice fade out effect. And we were like capturing each of those tweaks as a new image and then shoving them all together. So it's almost like that, but we're just letting JavaScript do all that of that automation for us. Excellent. Love it when JavaScript can do our work for us. Fabulous. And Nikaman79 says it would be great to do a ping pong animation, go like outwards and then inwards, or some go outwards and some go inwards. Yeah. So there's all kinds of fun things one could play with this. So would love to see forks of Olivia's notebooks here where folks take this and run with it or swim with it, I guess.
Yeah.
In keeping with my bad water puns this week. Amazing. So we have a few minutes left here. I'm curious, how hard would it be for us to get Japan up in this animated map right here? Is that I don't know. I don't know what I'm asking for here.
I can have a go.
We can see how far we can get in a few minutes. But meanwhile, definitely want to ask the chat if folks have any remaining questions for Olivia. I mean, I think we've just been all so wowed by these different maps and all that we've learned from these different approaches. Taking a look at the initial, how do we deal with the geometries with Turf.js? How do we deal with the SVG paths? So just getting to know properties like stroke width and opacity and things like that. And then diving into the animation side of things. So learning more about how D3 transitions work and don't work, finding out about new libraries like Flubber, and then realizing that sometimes we are stuck in a little mental model that we need to break out of to make our lives easier, and taking this new approach with the frame by frame animation. So here, ooh, but we've got, I mean, okay, so of course we don't have the,
yeah.
Well, I kind of, I mean, now we've got a nice sort of 1-for-1 of how Japan would compare to the Scilly Isles. But of course, you know, we probably don't have the same antique map tiles for Japan.
Yeah.
Look at it. I love it. Oh my gosh.
But
it's amazing.
Surprisingly quick. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Oh, folks find this properly inspirational. Awesome. Glad to hear it, Mademoiselle Couch. And Mayspace has a question, perhaps a more general question. Do you have any advice, Olivia, for a complete beginner who is learning D3? So you, as someone who's been using it for a while.
Yes. I mean, I think that it's you know the kind of the same message with you know learning kind of programming generally, that I've found that it's really when I'm working on something that I really want to make, that really interests me, that is like the most motivating. And so I first learned D3 through Scott Murray's interactive visualization on the web, which I found a really brilliant introduction, and you know worked through that entire book. And then it was really sort of just like working on my own projects of things that I wanted to make. And I do think it's kind of funny looking back that I like didn't realize like how little I knew at the time, and how much there was, but how much there is you can learn about it. But I think that just like making stuff is like always the best way to learn. If there's something that you know you have an idea for, then that's definitely the most motivating. I mean, this is, I think, a key example of that. This was just something that interested me. I didn't really think that that anybody else would be interested in this, and I didn't realize all of the things that I would learn along the way, just kind of probing this question. So sort of follow where your interest takes you.
Awesome. So I think I've got the right book that you mentioned here, Scott Murray's Interactive Data Visualization for the Web. Looks like there's a second edition there. I think that's the right one, Introduction to Designing with D3. And so folks can check that out if you're starting out with D3. We also have some resources on Observable. So we have a Learn D3 tutorial that you can find on our tutorials page. And we also have like so many of these cool notebooks. So I love that advice that you give, that, you know, it's really about finding your joy in the things that you want to build, because I find that totally to be true, that essentially that's what gives you the motivation to work through the hard moments of where you're just banging your head against the computer, not understanding. But when you have something in your mind, like, I can just see these water lines in my head, I know they're going to be awesome once I get it working, then that can provide that motivation to kind of keep going through the tough times. So awesome. Glad to hear Mayspace has some project ideas and feels inspired. So thank you, Olivia, for all this inspiration. Thank you for taking on these impromptu challenges. As ASU17 said, that it's awesome to see, you know, what we can change and play with here live on air, as it were. So thank you for being up for that. Thank you so much, everybody in the chat, for joining us and for digging into all of this today. So I hope everybody can go and take Olivia's notebooks, play with them, make them your own, have fun, make some forks. Be sure to share them and you can tag Olivia on Twitter, or, reach out to the rest of the Observable community on the forum and things like that. So be sure to give Olivia a follow, Olivia F. Vane on Twitter. Olivia, thank you so much for being here with us today and for making this amazing series of fantastic notebooks and tutorials, really, on how to dig into some of these technologies. You know, we covered a lot of ground, or water, I guess.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much
Amazing.
for having me. This was a pleasure.
Yeah, and I mean, I hope we will see you back sometime very soon. We love having you on the stream, so thank you so much for joining us again. And remember, everybody, we have a bunch of awesome streams coming up for you this week. So Olivia has kicked us off with our stream today on these fantastic waterline maps. Tomorrow, especially if you're curious about D3, you'll want to join us same time tomorrow, 9 a.m. Pacific, with Mike Bostock, creator of D3 and CTO of Observable. We'll be chatting with Shirley Wu, who is another amazing D3 creator. They will be talking about D3 and Plot, Observable Plot, the new data viz library Mike has created, and how those two compare. So if you're curious, if you're learning D3, if you want to dig in, if you want to try out Plot, join us tomorrow and check out our meetup page for more events that are coming up on Thursday and Friday. We have our CEO, Melody McFessel, talking to us about the company. We've got Ian and myself doing some forking on Friday. So we hope to see you all there. And last plug, we have a new DataViz contest that we are starting. So we started yesterday, a fork to win contest. So if you find awesome notebooks on our templates page, and there's some great map related ones there. So if Olivia has inspired you to make some really cool maps with D3 or with other tools like Mapbox, go to observablehq.com/templates, find a map notebook, take your Olivia inspiration and fork it and make it your own, and publish and share the notebook with us on social media, on Twitter, with the hashtag ObservableFTW to win some fun prizes. So you can read more about that contest on our blog, and we hope to see lots of amazing forks from y'all. Alrighty, well, I just want to say thank you so much to Olivia, who's one of our amazing Observable ambassadors, and to everybody else who's joined us in the chat today. We love hearing from all of you, so please, keep it coming. Keep up your keep joining us, and thank you, folks who are joining at 4 a.m. in New Zealand. Sorry about that. Hope you can get back to sleep and get some rest. We also would love to hear your feedback about how Observable can be better. So whether you're a pro creator doing this on the daily, like Olivia, or whether you're just starting out learning D3, we would love to hear from you. We have a community survey going on that you can find at on our main page at observablehq.com and at this notebook for the community survey. So please let us know what you think and how we can do better. And yeah, just so excited to have everybody here and getting inspired and excited to watch the Olympics, hopefully, if we can figure out how to. It's really difficult in the US this year. But meanwhile, I think this has just been an amazing learning journey. So thank you so much, Olivia, for sharing all of this and for teaching us how to make awesome, awesome maps, even these animated ones. I love it.
Moving maps.
Moving maps, living, breathing, water flowing maps. Excellent. All right. Well, we're going to sign off for today. Let everybody get on with their evening or morning or back to bed if it's 4 o'clock in the morning. So Olivia, thank you again. It's been amazing as always. And thanks everybody in the chat. We'll see you all next time.
Thank you.
Bye.